Today I'm going to show you how to make this absolutely gorgeous Little Betty and Big Betty set. This is just such a stunning result. If you like this tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And I also have a mentorship group where I go into more detail and share a little bit more of my tips and tricks. There's a link for you down in the description if you would like to join. Let's get started. We are going to start off by sanding our Little Betty and Big Betty to ensure that our paint gets that good adhesion. After it is all sanded, we are going to paint them black. If you haven't worked with a Big Betty before, you just take the handle off and you will have these little metal pieces still sticking up, and I'm just going to paint around those and make sure I have good coverage and let that paint dry. Once your paint is dry, we are going to add a coat of epoxy, and my little hack to get the handle to fit back on after epoxy is I have taped off the entire handle. I just used electrical tape, but you can use whatever tape you would like. And I have just set it right back on top of those little metal sections that are sticking up. I'm just gonna hold it down tightly on my tumbler, and starting around the handle, I am going to apply the epoxy all the way underneath the handle and around. And then I'm going to add a little bit of epoxy to each side while the handle is still on. Once that section is completely epoxied, I will just pull the handle off, and it will kind of leave the divots where the handle is, and then your epoxy won't get too thick when you go to put your handle back on, and the screws will line up. So once I have had those sections completely epoxied and the handle is removed, I will just continue to epoxy the rest of the tumbler as normal, making sure that I don't go back where the handle was and fill in those little sections that we don't want epoxy on. Now for the Little Betty, the handle is just attached, so there is nothing to remove. So you are just going to take a little bit of that leftover epoxy from your Big Betty and coat the entire tumbler, including the handle. Now you are going to cut out your pattern in holographic vinyl. I will have the Breathe and Drink SVG and the link to this exact pattern in my mentorship group. If you're interested in that, there is a link below in the description to join us. And then I'm just going to measure from the top of my tumbler down to the curve, and I'm going to cut out approximately that size of these dots and just cut off the bottom section and set that to the side. Before I apply those dots, I have just taken the handle and I have just placed it on there. It is not screwed on. That is just so I can align my decal the way I wanted it. And I did want this closer to the handle and not in the center. I just really thought that looked really cool. We are going to add the Breathe to the Big Betty and then the Drink to the Little Betty. Now I am going to take that top section of dots and just remove a little bit of the backing at a time. And we are just going to put it as close as we can to the decal, but don't worry if you are missing a few little spots. We're just going to press that on, and then I'm going to wrap that around, making sure that the the spots also cover the top where I want it to. Once it has been laid down correctly, I'm just going to remove a couple more inches of that backing. Sometimes I just fold it back, and today I was just wanting it out of my way, so I cut it off. And then we are just going to continue to apply these dots all the way around. When you get to the parts where those little metal pieces are sticking up for the handle, I just took an X-Acto knife and cut a slit in the transfer tape and applied that right over there. And then anything that I felt like was going to get in the way of the handle, I just removed or cut off. Now you can remove the transfer tape on the top part. And then if you have any extra dots that you didn't apply, we are just gonna go around the decal and fill in all of those spaces. Now we are going to take the bottom section and just line this up with the top section as best as you can. You won't start exactly where the pattern cut, but this pattern is very forgiving. So we are just going to do the best to apply it the best that we can to the bottom, which is slightly tapered, so it makes it just a tiny bit harder, but we are going to work in small sections, and then I will just cut some away, and then I do small sections. Once we get to where we have almost reached the beginning of our dots, but you can tell the pattern is not going to line up, we're just going to cut that excess away, and we are going to fill that in by hand by just taking the extra dots and placing the pattern the best we can one by one. Now we are going to apply our dots to our little Betty in the same fashion. I had just cut smaller sections here because I felt like it was a little bit easier to manage on such a tiny tumbler. Now we are going to take our tumblers back over to the turner, and once again take your taped off handle and just place it right on those little metal pieces poking up, and epoxy around the handle first. Once you have around the handle completely epoxied, you can just pull it off and set it to the side, and then go over to your little Betty and epoxy that, including the handle. Now you will take your handle and the screws that were provided and just screw your handle back in place, and then your tumblers are finished. I think this is such a gorgeous set. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks so much for watching.